Good morning, class. This is Professor Ely. I'm going to do a segment here. It's something I've never done before, particularly in an online class. But I want to try it, and I think it will be something that will be useful to you guys. You're all going to be graduating soon and off in your careers. And as you know, FIT is all about sharing real experiences and doing its best to get you ready for successful careers. And I want to try to add to that if I can. You're looking at a bunch of pictures of this guy, Lester Wunderman. I cited him and his book Being Direct earlier in the course, some of my early lectures. He kind of invented direct marketing. And his book, Being Direct, is something I've been kind of dipping in and out of this term and before this term to get ready to teach this spring 2020 term. And what I want to do now is I'm not going to change the visuals. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try reading from his book. It's in his voice, but you're going to have to put up with my voice. And it's a story about him dealing with corporate, real-life corporate, let's say politics and shenanigans and maneuvering with clients. This is someone at a very senior level of the agency business. He is, let's just set the stage. He's, at the time, he's 38 years old, which is younger than we see him, I think, in pretty much any of these pictures. He has been working for 12 years at another person's agency. And that agency was owned really by one person. It was called Maxwell Sackheim and Company. You haven't heard of it because it hasn't existed for quite a while. Wunderman still exists, and by the way, an agency called Wunderman. It's the largest direct marketing and interactive agency in the world, and it's under the WPP umbrella, which is the largest agency conglomerate, kind of monster marketing company in the world. Anyway, so Wunderman is clearly the winner there. Anyway, Wunderman has been the main person with most of the ideas, handling most of the accounts, and doing amazing things for the clients, kind of inventing a lot of new ways to do direct marketing. He's getting a salary, but he has no partnership or equity or ownership in this agency that he's been building for 12 years. And what's been happening is that the owner of the agency, Maxwell Sackheim, is a part-time owner now. He's living in Florida, and he's trying to manage his agency remotely. You know, the agency is based in New York. And he's also, this Maxwell Sackheim, getting ready for a succession because he wants to give away the agent or give up the agency, but he wants his sons to get his stock and to run the agency. And so there's a confrontation, or there's going to be a showdown between Lester Wunderman, who's really running the agency and has all the client relationships, and this Maxwell Sackheim. And I want to read this to you so you get a sense of the maneuvering and what different people are doing here to try to further their interests. I think it's something you may find kind of a useful little story, so put up with me, please. The chapter is chapter 16. It's How to Start an Advertising Agency. August 19th, 1958 was a hot, steamy summer Tuesday in New York. And New York was experiencing what weather forecasters call an air inversion, a system that keeps the bad air in and the good air out. I thought it was an odd day to have cold feet, but I was nervous. Max's company was suffering from an ownership inversion, which I felt was keeping bad people in and good ones out, and I was going to do something about it that day. I decided to resign from Maxwell Sackheim and Company. It wasn't a sudden decision. I've been thinking about it for a year. When I left my suburban home that morning and said goodbye to my wife, Lil Jan, my 6-year-old daughter Karen, and my 9-year-old son Mark. I wondered whether I was doing the right thing. After I resigned, life would be more difficult for all of us. Max and I fundamentally disagreed on many things. As I drove toward the city, I reviewed the events of the past year. We saw the future differently. He thought his advertising agency was mature and stable. He was spending half his time in retirement in Florida trying to run the company from there. I didn't think that would work. He wanted his 2 sons to succeed him, and I didn't think that would work either. I believed then, and I still do, that an advertising agency is a service business that has only the talents of his people to sell. To grow, it must attract promising professionals and constantly upgrade their skills. It must also attract new clients. Agencies that stop growing and changing die. No advertising agency has a secure franchise. Employees are always free to leave, and the contracts the agency has with its clients have 90-day cancellation clauses. Even the most successful advertising agency has earned only the right to do its client's next campaign. A year earlier, in June '57, I tried to resign when Max showed me a reorganization plan. The plan was that the Sackheim family would retain control of the business after Max's retirement. I couldn't accept that. Max then asked me for a counterproposal. With the help of an attorney, I gave him my objections in writing. The following month, Max, with his lawyers and his 2 sons, met with Ed, Irving, and me, these 3 other top guys at the agency. I was not concerned about the stock percentages to be made available to each person. The key issue was control of the agency, its personnel, and its strategy. Max told me that he and his family rejected my suggestions, and I said I'd resign. Ed and Irving also said they wouldn't accept Max's plan. We had another stormy meeting on July 4th and agreed on a compromise, one that said that upon Max's retirement, Ed, Irving, Max's 2 sons, and I would select a new president by majority vote. And parentheses, Wunderman would have the majority because he has Ricardo and Irving on his side, so that's 3-2. On July 11, I sailed for Europe on that long-deferred vacation with assurances that the arrangement we had agreed to would be written and ready for signature when I returned. But on my return, the papers did not conform to the agreement we had reached. They included a 2-year restrictive covenant, which I couldn't accept. This stated, in effect, that if I left the agency for any reason, including being fired, I couldn't work for any of the agency's clients for 2 years. This covenant was also to apply to Irving and Ed, but not to Max Sackheim or his sons. This looked like a trap. Obviously, Max couldn't face a future in which neither he nor his sons had complete control of the business, and I had no confidence in a future in which they did, and that was the way matters stood. We had an uneasy truce, but no one believed we had seen the end of the problem. It was no way to run a business or a life, and a year later, I decided to break the stalemate. I was 38 years old and I had choices. I was the best-known young executive in the growing field of direct response advertising. Most people thought I was Max's partner, but in fact, I owned no shares in the agency. I'd received other job offers regularly, but I had not been interested. I loved my work, but at the moment, I didn't like my job. I wasn't driven by the need for money or power. I had other things on my mind. And he's ready for another kind of freedom, he says, to follow his own vision. So I told Irving, Ed, and Harry, one of Sackheim's account supervisors, of my decision. They said if I resigned, they would too. I couldn't have stopped them if I'd wanted to, and I didn't. Our interests had been joined by the pressure of our negotiations with Max, his sons, and their lawyers. We were the others who had been dealt with as outsiders in the negotiations. Our reactions were the same. We didn't want to work for Max as an absentee owner or for his sons. We didn't know what we'd do after we left, but we knew we couldn't go on as we were. When we objected to Max's plan for reorganization, we had known that Max would get rid of us one at a time as soon as he found replacements. Morale in the agency was low, and some clients were beginning to feel uncomfortable about the agency's unresolved problems. Something had to be done. It was 11 o'clock when I entered Max's office. I sat down, looked at him, and thought of the 12 years I'd spent with him. He had fired me once, and I'd refused to leave. Now I knew he would accept my resignation without comment. We had been successful colleagues, but our interests were no longer the same. Max looked at me without expression, waiting for me to speak. I swallowed hard and told him I had concluded that the best thing I could do was resign. He seemed neither shocked nor surprised, and asked who was leaving with me. I said I didn't know. It was over. No handshake, no drama, no protests, no recriminations. Within the hour, Ed, Irving, and Harry also resigned. Max accepted their resignations without comment, and the four of us went to lunch. Having resigned, we were free to discuss the future, including the possibility of starting an agency of our own. When we returned to the office, we found we had been locked out. The receptionist said she had instructions from Mr. Sackheim not to permit us to enter. My files and possessions had been impounded. I understood the need to protect the company records, but I didn't understand why my personal belongings were being held. I needed my desk diary, phone book, briefcase, tax records, and personal papers. Max even had my winter galoshes. Maxwell Sackheim and Company was then located just across the street from Hotel Winslow. I registered there, taking the least expensive room for $30 a day. It contained a single bed, 2 chairs, and a small desk, a bathroom, and most important, a telephone. It was Wednesday afternoon, August 20th, the first day of my new life. Irving, Ed, and Harry joined me in my office at the Winslow. Our combined assets were about $60,000. We had no real office, no company, no credit, and no clients, and we'd have to live on our capital until we had some income. I assigned each of us to a task. Ed was to design stationery for our new agency, which we decided to call Wunderman, Ricotta, and Klein, Inc. Irving and Harry Klein were to find inexpensive office space to sublet. We would move in at once. My lawyer would draw up papers of incorporation and hire an accounting firm experienced with advertising agencies. It would help us to choose a bank. And my task was to call clients who I hoped would give us work. End of part 1. Part 2. So